thing. I am not clinically insane. I just enjoy my insanity, all right? And sometimes saying that you want to be a parasite inside someone's heart so that you clog their arteries and live with them forever is a very normal thing. Love that. Can hate that. It's fine. You know, all of the good things that are coming back, you know, we've got 3 Mile Island and Reactor 4 coming back online in the year of our Lord 2028, but that's because it's needed to power AI. And then I get on my hands and knees and I cry. And then I cry about how badly the public communications of 3 Mile Island were handled, because people put that on the same level of Chernobyl. And I'm like, you guys, no. And we can talk about the history of 3 Mile Island, because I do like to bitch and moan about that a lot, actually. I sometimes bitch and moan about that at just a dinner, and then I go, maybe we shouldn't talk about this. It was completely contained by a protocol, yeah. Because it's kind of like an interesting conversation. Is 3 Mile Island is a really good example of terrible PR. And I don't think people actually realize in the United States, the 3 Mile Island is what led to the downfall of the nuclear energy industry. Chernobyl really just kind of solidified it, but 3 Mile Island is what drove the railroad spike through the heart of the industry. Because it was after this, and you know, I'm kind of going a little ahead without talking about the event, but multiple plants were actually halted mid-construction or in their deliberation stages right after 3 Mile Island. There was actually a really, really large one, and it was at Marble Hill. I think it was, oh my gosh, at least $2-3 billion in investment. And it was almost near the end of its construction. This is the really heartbreaking thing, is it was almost at the end of its construction. And there were just so many losses and kind of essentially a gridlock put on energy production in the nuclear sector after 3 Mile Island. And it just was devastating. And this is not just to nuclear energy in the United States, but as a whole, because we were on a trajectory. You know, if you weren't living through that time, it's very hard to understand. Our trajectory was towards nuclear energy, and that would have been a massive boon just for environmental prosperity and the, you know, really the energy procurement and security of the entire world. And as far as just securing that as a basic utility and ensuring that that is readily available as a renewable source. But kind of those attitudes really, really shifted. So there was not a lot of impetus after this happened to license any new plants. Because when you have a new plant, you have to license it. And the general public sentiment was incredibly fear-based. And that's understandable with the way that the incident at 3 Mile Island was, you know, relayed to the general public. It was made to seem absolutely terrifying. From 1978 to, I believe, 2012, 2013, the NCR didn't approve any construction of new commercial reactors. Also, hi Luma, how's it going? I hope things are going well. And there were new reactors that were still constructed following 3 Mile Island, but permitting didn't occur. And there were also a bunch of different projects attempted throughout that, but there's just a massive gap. Construction permits issued and the initial year of operation, and 1978, 1980, they just stopped because 79 is when 3 Mile Island happened. And then you had Chernobyl, shortly after. But in the 2000s, we did kind of hit our, nuclear renaissance, as it's called. We had decades of no development, and nuclear power did make a really big comeback. However, here's kind of the problem. Guess what happened? We'd had Fukushima, and that created a lot of new fears. Then you just also had the 2008 financial crisis hit really hard, and that shifted economic priorities massively away from nuclear energy, and that renaissance never actually got to go into full swing. So we were starting to have that. But yeah, so with 3 Mile Island, it's near Middletown, Pennsylvania. It did partially melt down on March 28th, 1979. Now, the big thing when I'm saying, again, partially melted down, you probably think that's terrifying. It's not. It's really not. This was such a small incident, but it was the most serious accident in US commercial power plant operating history. Now, again, you're like, Miss Radia, but what about SL1? SL1 wasn't commercial, okay? That's the fucking Army's fault, and we talk about that one later, okay? Because they had to do an autopsy with what is the equivalent of one of those dinosaur grabby arms. And I think that's kind of fucked up, but also really interesting. We'll go back to that one day, okay? But I'm not talking about SL1. That's the Army's problem, and I'm not throwing my hat in that ring, but that is, in terms of like nuclear disasters, the worst in America. This is, 3 Mile Island is the worst commercial for commercial like nuclear power plant. Small incidents are pretty big. Honestly, this 3 Mile Island is just, nothing happened. There has been, just to preface this, no increased rates of leukemia or any other kind of cancers in the surrounding area that are from anything that happened at 3 Mile Island, because what really was admitted was gases. Those just dissolve in the atmosphere. Fucking gone. The half-lives of it too are also just, again, I will talk more about that, but it is really frustrating because I like want to like strangle people. I'm like, it's not bad. It's really not that bad. I know you're like, but it was a partial meltdown. It has to be terrible. I mean, terrible in terms of every single thing being bypassed or overlooked. The atmosphere is a great garbage bin. But yeah, what's interesting about like 3 Mile Island is what happened is the plant had a failure in the secondary non-nuclear section of the plant. Like there was 2 reactors on site. So to this day, I don't know if they know if it was a mechanical or electrical failure, but it prevented like the main feed water pump from sending water to the steam generators. And those remove heat from like the reactor core. So what happened is like the turbines just shut down. Like the turbine generator to that reactor just shut down, absolutely. And then there was pressure in the primary system, and that just kept increasing and increasing and increasing. And so what you do to control when pressure builds up is you have a relief valve. So the valve should have been closed when the pressure fell to proper levels, but it ended up being like stuck open. So all of the instruments that were in the control room indicated to the plant staff that like the valve itself was closed. And I also think there was a piece of paper that covered the valve, which also made it really hard to read. There's a lot that goes into like that in particular. You love steam tech? It's sure interesting. So basically what ended up happening is the entire staff of 3 Mile Island were essentially unaware that cooling water in the form of steam was just pouring out of this, like the open valve. So you had a bunch of alarms and warning lights, but the operators didn't realize what was happening was a loss of coolant accident. And essentially, all of the other instruments that they had provided really inadequate or misleading info. And when you look at this reactor, like they're actually refurbishing it right now to bring it into the modern era. Admittedly, the interfaces and a lot of the other stuff is going to be pretty archaic compared to what people are trained on nowadays, but that's why people are going through training now to work specifically on bringing back the reactor for Microsoft's use, because they purchased the rights to that, and it'll go on in 2028, but they're going through all the restoration processes at the moment and training.
I love toggles and switches.
There's so much. It looks really cool. Like it's very if you've ever gone to like a switch room, or if you've looked at like the really old boards of NASA, it really looks like that. And it's just, there's so much going on. It does look like the inside of a jet plane. It's a little scary. I think I would like have an anxiety attack trying to man that compared to what modern interfaces are. I would be like, maybe this is not for me. Like maybe this is not my kind of TISM thing, like that's a lot of knobs. I'm sorry, I need the computer screen on the reactor interface or I'm going to cry. Like I'm gonna be, there's no God, there's no God, there's no God. What do the lights mean, Mason? The numbers, Mason.